The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Andreas Antonopoulos, author of Mastering Bitcoin. Blake Anderson from Facebook.com/GotBlake. Marshall Hayner from Block.io. And Megan Lords from Crypto Convos and Bitcoin Not Bombs. And I'm Thomas Hunt from Mad Bitcoins. First off, the Bitcoin Group would like to recognize a regular contributor to the show, Andreas Antonopoulos, for his excellent appearance before the Canadian Senate on Bitcoin. It was hard to tell if the Senate was more impressed with Andreas or with Bitcoin. Great job. Prediction: Andreas will one day appear before the American Senate. Moving on. Issue 1. Bitcoin price drops below 300. The slaying of the BearWhale. An unknown party sold more than 30,000 Bitcoins at the low price of $300, causing the entire market to move vertically for 6 consecutive hours on Monday night. Before this epic sale, the price of Bitcoin had fallen to a recent low of $275. Since the BearWhale, the market has recovered about 25% to around $375 a coin. Have we seen the low? Is Bitcoin about to bounce back? Andreas Antonopoulos.
Yeah, it looks like it's bouncing back already, but that doesn't mean the cycles are over or that volatility is done. This is a roller coaster. Hold on to your hats. We've got a $5 billion currency trying to swallow a world economy and bring on board 7.5 billion people. It's a long way until we reach stability. So there are going to be more ups and downs, and they're going to be sudden, they're going to be disruptive, they're going to be scary. And so if you thought that Bitcoin was a suitable investment to put your family's retirement plan in and day trade, then right now you're probably having a bad day or a bad month or most likely a bad year. Bitcoin is a fantastic medium of exchange. It's a fantastic long-term store of value, and it is a craptacular get-rich-quick scheme, so don't use it for that.
Blake Anderson.
I'm still smiling over the craptacular adjective. That was fantastic. Yeah, the Bitcoin, the bear whale. I like the bear whale meme that has come up on the internet with the giant whale with the bear head. It looks very scary and very vicious. But yeah, it seems like the market chopped it up and ate the that big wall of Bitcoins, which was really good to see. I think that yeah, there's a lot of different factors that come into, is the price of Bitcoin going to go up? Is it going to go down? And I think that it's more important to discuss the factors that have an impact on this than to just try to throw darts and discuss numbers. For right now, the hash rate has not been easing up as the price has eased up. So some people kind of describe this as turned upside down a little bit. So if you have lots of miners that are liquidating the Bitcoins that they mine in order to pay power and stuff like that, then you're going to have, you know, worst case scenario, about 3,500 Bitcoins hitting the markets every day. And so some people are speculating that unless there's, you know, a Western exchange open or some kind of a big event, that we might see, you know, volatility and a little bit lower price point to the block having in 2016. But, you know, hopefully it won't take that long. But everybody should invest wisely and appropriately and avoid doing the things that Andreas told us we shouldn't do.
Is the difficulty still scheduled to go down?
I think it went down about I think it went up 1%, so it didn't quite go down. I think it was one of the smallest difficulty increases in recent times.
All right. Marshall Hayner.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I mean, you see this order hit the market, and how long did it stay there before the market snapped it up? It seemed like maybe like 4 hours or something like that. It wasn't very long. So you don't really know who's on the other side, people that want to buy. The people that want to buy $15 million, $30 million worth of Bitcoin, they're not necessarily buying on the open market. So this was definitely unusual. A lot of those orders happen OTC or over-the-counter style trades. I think it's good. It shows how strong Bitcoin is. Even if the price goes down to $1, as many people have pointed out, it doesn't eliminate the utility of Bitcoin and the usefulness. So I think it was interesting. It's obviously a holder that got a weak hand, and I don't blame him. He got his millions and he got out.
As shocking as it was to see the 30,000 Bitcoins for sale, it was even more shocking to see the market buy them all. Megan Lords.
I don't know if this is the low or not. I think there's going to continue to be a lot of volatility, and that's something that's going to bring a lot of attention to Bitcoin, which I think is generally good, even if it's bad press. I used to be very much against the idea of, these kind of journalists, they're completely ignorant, they're attacking Bitcoin for no reason, but I've kind of recently changed my mind on that, and I think people are very fixated on the price when there are a lot of other things they could be focusing on that Bitcoin is useful for. So everyone's focused kind of on the currency aspect of it, but I think this is a good time for people to be less focused on the price and maybe more focused on some of the other possibilities out there too. So I don't know if we've seen the bottom of this or not. I'm not great at predicting the future for investments, and I continue to say what I've always said to people, and that's don't put more than you can afford to lose into Bitcoin if you're thinking of it as an investment. There are a lot of these kind of horror stories on Reddit and other parts of the internet that, you kind of see people blaming the Bitcoin community for, or even, other things too. And, it's important to remember that, yeah, this is not something that you really want to do a whole lot of trading with. It's not very stable, and it's going to continue to move up and down for a while. So can't say if we've seen the bottom yet.
Exit question. Speculate as to why the BearWhale would do such a thing. Why would someone sell so many coins at one time at such a low price? Andreas Antonopoulos.
Well, there's a lot of speculation. One of the things to remember is that U.S. taxes are due October 15th. So like many other people in the community, I am selling Bitcoin at the moment in order to pay my US dollar taxes, because I did search on the IRS webpage for the Pay with Bitcoin button, so I could pay to the one IRS has your money address, but there wasn't one. And so apparently I have to convert my beautiful digital money into green cotton-based currency and pay that way. And that's going to cause some selling pressure. So that's my guess. Paying taxes.
Blake Anderson.
Well, I think that there's a lot of different reasons. I think that, like I was saying, if there's going to be, a lot of sell pressure coming from miners because the hash rate has really, really taken off, that could be it. But I think that it would be fun to go really deep into the what-if bag and say maybe some of these ASIC producers that were running their machines not on test nets like they were advertising, and they were doing burn-in for their ASIC machines, and they were mining Bitcoin. Maybe one of them was like, oh, eyes are starting to snoop around. Let me offload all these Bitcoin as quickly as I possibly can, and the BearWhale might be that. I don't know if that's what happened, but speculation is always fun, and it's always fun the deeper into the what-if bag you go.
It happened to Butterfly Labs. It could happen to us. Marshall Hayner.
I think, Tim Draper just got really nervous, and he was like, this is a bad investment, sell, sell, sell. No, just kidding. I think that, you see all of the coins moving out of there. It's been over a year since the coins were in there. I think it probably was just somebody that got a little bit nervous, had a weak hand. He couldn't hodl, so I think
got $6 million instead of $18 million. Not a very good trade. Megan Lords.
So I've been seeing a lot of claims that maybe this is an act of manipulation, and I think it's important to keep that in mind, that this is a small market that's still small enough to very easily manipulate. But I think a more reasonable thing is this person just needed to sell these coins, and they got very nervous when they saw the price dropping. So I'm going to stick with that. I don't know. Of course, I can't speak to know this person personally and what their incentives were, but I think maybe they were just scared and wanted to sell.
I do agree with the other speculation that to sell so many coins in one order It clearly sounds like a computer science type person, unfamiliar with trading, just willing to dump them all. Even splitting them into $1,000 chunks or $10,000 chunks would have netted a lot more money. It just seems like an incredible move, but that's Bitcoin. Moving on, issue
Well,
2.
before we move on, hang on. I have a request to make. Can we get someone to work on a bear whale jingle, which combines the roar of a bear and the whale song? Because we need the jingle. There's a beautiful visual. We've got the visual. We need the soundbite now. So someone should start working on that right away. We need the bear whale sound.
Bear whale rapping, I could see something going down. It's ripe for
you got it.
ready to go. We'll move on anyway. Issue 2. Bitcoin startup funding continues to grow. Blockchain.info, the popular Bitcoin wallet provider, scored $30 million in funding from Lightspeed Ventures this week. Bitfury, that manufactures ASIC chips for Bitcoin mining, picked up $20 million from major players such as the former CFO of Vodafone and the co-founder of Google Maps, despite the market price of Bitcoin being down in the dumps. What do these investors know that other investors don't? I ask you, Blake Anderson.
Well, I know that Bitfury is one of the only large mining operations that is really not almost completely insolvent right now. Bitfury has several different advantages that others don't have. So if we're going to see investment into various different mining operations, this would be the one. I think that the venture capitalists did their homework. And if we want to continue to have a strong hash rate, I think it's important to continue to keep infrastructure in mind. So I don't want to say too much because I think that I know some special things about this that I'm not at liberty to say, but I'll have an unusually brief answer here, I guess.
Marshall Hayner.
I think, it's interesting. It makes sense because these are some of the largest investments in the Bitcoin space, and these are two of the largest players in the Bitcoin space. It makes sense that we should be building infrastructure around Bitcoin, and like Blake said, I think that Bitfury is one of the few mining companies that's not, insolvent or having all these consumer complaints against them. It makes me happy to see at least one mining company is doing it right. So I'm glad that they got the money and not Butterfly Labs.
Megan Lords.
Well, I think these people are focusing on the bigger picture with Bitcoin, and they realize the value that the technology has beyond it being a currency. So despite the low price currently, that's not scaring them away from it. I think they've done their research, and they're really looking at the big picture and seeing it for what it is, which is an extremely valuable technology that we're going to see have some, long-term effects. So yeah, I think they're informed. They've done their homework, and I don't think they know anything we don't know necessarily. They're enthusiastic about it, and I think that's really great news.
Andreas Antonopoulos.
Well, most of these investors are looking at a horizon of at least 3 to 5 years for a return on investment here. And so short-term variations in the Bitcoin price or hysteria over bear whales and ridiculous things like that really don't affect their investment outlook. They look at the fundamentals of this technology and they see something that has the potential of significantly disrupting several very, very large industries that regularly are appraised in the order of several $100 billion. So from that perspective, these little scrappy startups are great opportunities. Another way to look at this is that in many cases, these investors will be investing dollars, and many of these Bitcoin companies are capitalized in Bitcoin, which means that now is the perfect time to make that conversion. So for example, blockchain that operated as a Bitcoin-only business for many, many years now can potentially get twice as much Bitcoin at the current rate than they would have if they capitalized this just 3 or 4 months ago. And so for them, that's a great advantage. I'm really looking forward to see what a little scrappy startup like Blockchain can do, a company that managed to do some quite amazing things in this space with very, very little money. This is their first round of finance. and what they can do now with $30 million. So I'm very excited, and congratulations to the blockchain team that I was part of. I've got many good friends there, and very excited to see the future.
Very exciting. Did you know the World Crypto Network, thanks to the hard work of Mr. Chris Ellis and the intrepid reporting of James Bang, have been covering the Occupy Central pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong live from Hong Kong? Thanks to Bitcoin donations, James was also able to purchase hundreds of dollars worth of dim sum, which was given directly to the protesters live on the World Crypto Network. The World Crypto Network is literally creating the future of journalism on the internet. Get involved today at worldcryptonetwork.com. Issue 3. The Bitcoin Foundation attempts to negotiate with SuperNintendo Lawsky and his inflexible bit license. Demanding access to the NYDFS's still unavailable extensive research and analysis, which they already promised they would provide within 20 days, but are now promising to deliver well after the comment period is over. The Bitcoin Foundation warns that the bit license would force businesses to cut off New York from their services, something that several Bitcoin companies such as Zappo and Circle have already promised to do, as well as costing the state of New York jobs as Bitcoin companies flee the state, which also already happened. To say nothing of the fact that because Bitcoin contains a communicative element, the very attempt to regulate could be unconstitutional under First Amendment grounds. Does the emperor have no clothes? Is Ben Lawsky's bit license more about protecting the banks and less about protecting consumers? I ask you, Marshall Hayner.
I think it's interesting what's happening with BitLicense. I think a lot of Bitcoin companies are very nervous about it. I think that it's good that the Bitcoin Foundation is reaching out and basically asking for these questions, because not really many people are, and we definitely need to understand what's going on and what's going to happen in terms of regulation for Bitcoin. Will they necessarily respond to this? And
will they respond to the great Bitcoin Foundation? Megan Lords.
So I guess I feel bad for people who believed Ben Lawsky that he would actually provide this information before the end of the commenting period, because I just can't trust anything these people say. I think they're going to go for the hardest hitting regulations they can, and I think the backlash of that is going to be Bitcoin companies moving away from New York, and that's really, really unfortunate for the people living in New York. I think that's terrible. I think that Ben Lawsky is probably going to go forward with these, and it doesn't matter who comments or how many comments are made about it. Not that, I don't think the Bitcoin Foundation does a lot to, lobby for pro-Bitcoin things. I think they're very involved in the space, and they're very actively trying to be a voice for Bitcoiners, but they don't have to listen, is the thing. Ben Lawsky doesn't have to listen, and there's really no incentive for him to listen. I think this really is about protecting the banks, just like all regulation is. And if I think a lot of the people on this panel were paying attention to a couple weeks ago when the Goldman Sachs tapes were released, and we saw what a failure, like an abject failure regulation is, because the people who are on the regulatory side are intertwined with the banks and the bankers. There's no incentive for them to actually protect consumers, and I think you're seeing the same thing with Bitcoin. I think they realize that it's a threat at this point, and I think that they are trying to stop it, and I think the less they understand it, the better. I want them to pass these regulations with very little understanding and very little look into Bitcoin, because I think they'll be less effective that way. And I think it's unfortunate. Again, I really think he's really going to try to bring the hammer down on this, and we'll see. But I think Bitcoin will persevere regardless. It's just a matter of, we have to, I think, take a realistic look at this, and I think to trust that Ben Lawsky or any of the other people who want to hardcore regulate Bitcoin are on our side at all, or even care what we have to say about it, is a little unrealistic.
Oh, come on. Ben Lawsky did a Reddit AMA. We can trust him,
He's
right?
just like one of us, yeah,
One of us. He's on Reddit. He's got an account, just like you and me. Right, Andreas?
I'm going to take a slightly contrarian position here and say that the bit license is bad news. It's very bad news. It's very bad news for the financial institutions that will not be able to move from New York, that will not be able to exclude New York customers, that will not be able to be nimble, that will not be able to adapt to these draconian measures, and will therefore be excluded from competing in this exciting new sphere. And those financial institutions are the banks that are based in New York. The bit license essentially will affect them even more than it affects the Bitcoin companies, because it will make them compete against Bitcoin from a fixed base of operations that they have in New York that they cannot avoid, that they're not flexible enough to route around, that they can't relocate. And that base of operations will be compromised by regulations that require Bitcoin to be centralized, to be laden with identity, to be made as vulnerable and insecure as credit cards, to be slowed down and pacified, neutered and defanged, and turned into lukewarm piss. And we already have that in New York, and it's called JP Morgan Chase. And quite honestly, they're not going to be able to participate in this exciting new technology. At the end of the day, if this had happened on the internet and the FCC had regulated licenses, it would have been the big American telecom companies that would have lost out while the internet happened somewhere else. And now what New York will do is it will tie the hands of the New York banks and make it impossible for them to compete against these new, nimble competitors.
Blake Anderson.
Well, I usually, whenever we talk about Super Nintendo Lawsky, I like to jump back to the basics about, what is regulation? What is this word that we're using? Is regulation not supposed to be a standardized set of practices and policies that are developed in bilateral communication through companies in an industry to make it so that consumers are protected and so that risk is mitigated? Regulation doesn't seem like something that an unelected bureaucrat should be able to unilaterally force on people, amputating the financial hand of the West in New York. I think that from an information science and logic perspective, this is just so asinine that I don't know what Lawsky thinks he's doing, and I don't know why they would be talking about Bitcoin in the way that they are. If they were going to be talking about the regulation of custodial accounts, or like something wherein, this is how you're going to handle things, not really dealing with Bitcoin, but the legacy system having the legacy regulation that's been set up, I mean, that's one thing. But to talk about, we're going to force changes into Bitcoin, or, punish people in New York, it just seems, it's batshit crazy. It's really insane, and it's really kind of not comical, but just like a train wreck that you can't look away from. So
the future of Bitcoin in an entire state is up to one man. Ain't democracy grand? Marshall Hayner.
I think, I'd like to just add that here in Palo Alto and San Francisco, we have beautiful weather year-round. So if you're into crypto, come visit us out here. I've been hearing a lot. I'd like to add my prediction right now. I've been hearing scuttlebutt, and you can find it.
The NSA strikes again.
That action on several Bitcoin companies, and I've been hearing it for a while, but I guess we'll see. It definitely may.
You're breaking up in and out. It might be
Taking
broadcasting
space.
through to the people at home. We're not sure. All right, we'll just keep going, guys. Megan Lords.
Yeah, I think this is really, really, again, the bit license regulations, as they stand, is just really horrible for the people who are wanting to do business and view this as an opportunity to break into a new industry that I think is going to be rapidly growing in the next few years. It's really bad news, and it's something, again, I don't know really can be stopped with commenting. Not to say that you shouldn't be commenting and you shouldn't, maybe be saying something to them. I encourage any kind of activism. I'm definitely, I guess, a diversity of tactics person, just go out there, say something about it. But again, like I I just don't know that they're going to listen, and I really hope other states don't follow suit. I really hope this is just a New York specific situation. I really don't think. I think it'll be an interesting experiment to see after the regulations go into place, because I think that there's going to be very little give on the regulations. We'll definitely see, what happens on an economic level, and I hope that other states will be able to look at that and realize that it's not in their best interest to be regulating this technology.
It's like the entire state of New York has chosen to use typewriters instead of computers, which is actually something that Vladimir Putin. Exit question. The bit license proposal will be released with substantial changes, unchanged, or will it be withdrawn? Andreas Antonopoulos.
I think it will be released with some changes, but the fundamental framework of that license regulation, which is to attempt to centralize Bitcoin, to make it more like a banking system, even though its redeeming and most interesting feature is that it's not a banking feature, to add identity to a system that not only doesn't need it, but which decentralizes risks by avoiding revealing identities on every transaction, and to give those identities to the same intermediaries who lose 50 to 60 million identities every month or so. All of that is not going to be watered down. That is going to remain in the legislation, because these regulations are designed to make Bitcoin behave like a banking institution, and that it really misses the point completely. You can't change that. That reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what Bitcoin is, how it works, and more importantly, why it's special, what things about it are special, because it's removing exactly these. My prediction is that the bit license will be equivalent and will go down in history just the same as the Red Flag Act, a law that was passed in 1896 in Britain requiring that every automobile was preceded by a flagman waving a red flag to warn pedestrians that a car was coming. Just like the bit license, what it did was it turned a technology that had the potential to be faster than pedestrians into one that had to follow a pedestrian, therefore diluting the very value of that technology, set the automotive industry in the UK back by 20 years, by which point they lost the race.
Blake Anderson.
That was such a great example that I've lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
Unchanged, substantial changes, or withdrawn?
I think that there'll be substantial changes that were made. I think that that's the point of the comment period. I don't think that the substantial changes will be in our favor, but I think that it will be substantial changes, probably for the worse.
That's great news. It could get worse. Not even an option. Marshall Hayner.
I really like Andreas's example of the red flag, because I think that's kind of what's happening here. What we're seeing is this heavy-handed regulation coming down, and then Ben Lawsky comes on Reddit and says, "Oh, guys, I'm one of you. I want to hear what your input is," and then we meet somewhere in the middle, which is really bad. And yeah, I think it's gonna damage jobs in New York. It's gonna keep people from creating new startups. It's going to keep investors out of the space.
A good compromise is where
I think the smart thing to do is, and yeah, I might have cut out there for a second.
All right, do you want to finish? Give it a try. Oh, it didn't finish. Megan Lords, will it be released with substantial changes, unchanged, or withdrawn?
I think if there are any changes, there'll be slight changes and probably for the worse. I tend to agree with Blake on this. I think the more they understand the technology, the more they realize in what efficient ways they can regulate it. And I think that's really bad for everyone. And, maybe this is kind of strange, but I think people should stop talking to them and educating them about it. Not from like maybe a personal level, like I want everyone to understand Bitcoin, right? But the more they kind of understand it, the better they'll be able to regulate it and really crush it and really create a situation that's much worse than it really would have been otherwise. So if there are any changes, I think they'll be slight and probably not for the best. I think, while they don't care about the commentary on the bit license, they do care more about understanding it so that they can regulate it better. So I think that's kind of a dangerous combination, you know, and they're already really, really bad as they stand. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they were just passed as they already are, you know, with no changes, because that really is pretty bad enough.
Pessimists, all of you. I'm sure Ben Lawsky's watching this right now. His heart's going to grow 10 sizes, and he'll change his mind. You know how I know? Because he follows me on Twitter. He must be watching. Issue 4. Bitcoin could save journalism and the arts. A glowing article from Walter Isaacson, author of the Steve Jobs biography and former managing editor of Time magazine, claims that Bitcoin micropayments could truly help the internet live up to its full potential and literally save both journalism and the arts by providing frictionless nanotransactions, the ability for 1 million people to send in 1 million pennies, and thanks to Bitcoin, that money will not be eaten up by transaction fees. Could Bitcoin truly usher in a new renaissance, where content providers are paid directly by their audience and not by advertisers and middlemen? Megan Lords.
So this is something I've been thinking about for a while now, and I'm glad someone finally verbalized it into such a concise article that's just really, I really thought he drove it home with this article. I definitely agree with it. You know, it's very hard to make a living writing or in the arts of any kind these days, and I think that having the ability to send small amounts, and we're already doing it in the space, things like Change Tip, and even what the World Crypto Network is doing, you know, where it's becoming easier and easier to tip people. I mean, with Bitcoin, people are already doing it in the Bitcoin space. It's just a matter of getting this message out to people, which is why I was so happy to see it on Time, because tons of people read Time who aren't into tech, and I think that's great when they see that there's this application that they can use, that they don't necessarily have to understand the technology behind Bitcoin. It makes it very easy for them to accept payments. And if you're a struggling artist or a writer or anything like that, it makes it a little bit easier. You know, it's so easy to just be able to put up a little QR code next to your PayPal donate button on your site and have people donate that way. People already have been pretty successful in fundraising for different projects with Bitcoin too. So I'm really glad that someone vocalized it outside of the kind of Bitcoin space, because you know, they even used a quote from an author of Bitcoin Magazine, which Bitcoin Magazine has really been on this too. They've published numerous articles saying along the same things, really, and I'm glad to see it kind of reach a broader audience, because when you had this economic crisis, one of the things that suffered the most, I think, was arts. It's very, very hard, and a lot of the musicians I know and other writers I know, they're struggling right now if that's their main profession. And I've been telling them about it for a while now. Like, Bitcoin is something you can use to kind of help out a little bit. Maybe you can't make a living with it right now, but there's future potential there. So I was really happy to see that article. I completely agree, because those professions are really one of the hardest to be successful in. So thank you, Walter Isaacson, for finally saying that and getting it out there.
And ChangeTip is a great way for non-technical people to accept Bitcoin and try it out. And if you have a camera phone, it also has a microphone on it, and you're instantly a reporter no matter where you are. And we can send you money to support you. And this isn't just a story. This is what's happening this week live from Hong Kong on the World Crypto Network. So it's already starting to happen.
Andreas, for active. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. All right, Andreas Antonopoulos.
Yeah, Megan was just about to say it's great for activism. You're absolutely right. The concept of an empowered citizen journalist who can bypass intermediaries and appeal directly to an audience is incredibly powerful. And part of the reason it's powerful is because when your financing depends on these intermediaries who act as aggregators of content, they start imposing filtering and editorial control over the content in order to appease advertisers instead of serving their audience. And as a result, what you get is the corporate-approved, watered-down version of news / infotainment that we see on TV today, or even that we see in the New York Times today. So this is fantastic news. This is something that at least the people at Let's Talk Bitcoin, where I've been doing work and content for more than a year now, have seen and applied in practice, and that experiment has been tremendously effective. Bitcoin will not only save journalism and content creation and the arts, it will also fund infrastructure on the internet that today has to either be free or advertiser supported at very, very thick granularity, if you like, where you have to pay a subscription or you have to pay $12.95 a day to get Wi-Fi in order to compensate for some of the costs of infrastructure. The ability to do nano payments will influence the growth of the internet, will fuel new forms of growth on the internet in order to bring banking services to the world. It will grow the infrastructure. It will grow mesh networks. It will grow peer-to-peer communities and protocols, and it will also fuel journalism and content creation on the internet like we've never seen before. So the internet created Bitcoin, and now Bitcoin is going to turn around and turbocharge the internet. And finally, the mainstream media are beginning to see this. It is a really historic moment.
A great example of the media being controlled by advertising recently is the John Oliver show. John Oliver is now on HBO, so unlike The Daily Show, he's not controlled by advertising, so he was able to do an incredible hit piece on payday loans that The Daily Show never could do because all the late-night advertising on Comedy Central is payday loans. Blake Anderson.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that that's a great example that you brought up with the payday loans, because that has become, not good. The interest rates on the payday loans, if you're not familiar with that scandal, are camera goes out, which is always fun. And just listen to me talk. It's really, really, really great to see the arts kind of come back, because, as we were saying before, the arts being crushed.
Some schools in my areas don't even have music and PE anymore. If you didn't have music and PE at school, I think I would have lost my mind. Marshall Hayner, are you still there?
Yeah, hopefully I don't cut out this time, but I'm having some technical issues over here. So yeah, this is something that really means a lot to me, the ability to have these micro payments for the arts, for music, for entertainment. There's a fundamental problem in the recording industry and the motion picture industry right now, and that is, I guess you could say they just don't have the right models anymore. People don't shop at record stores. We don't go and pay $20 a CD anymore. It's 99 cents a song, and we do it all online. And so I think, if we can have these micro payments, and Dogecoin is a perfect example of what we see on Reddit with these micro payments and the power of tiny payments and what we can do with that. I don't have a problem paying 50 Doge for every awesome article I read on the internet every day.
And the Dogecoin has really spread the tips around. Exit question: how long will it take before Bitcoin nano payments can truly catch on? 6 months? A year? More than that? Megan Lords.
Oh man, I'm terrible at these prediction things. Well, it's already being used by people in the space, which I think is really good, and I think it's just going to grow from there and really spread out. It's hard to put an exact number on it. It really is. Things seem to move so fast in Bitcoin, and then you kind of step outside the bubble and you realize how hard it is for people to kind of jump on with you. So I can't really, I don't have an exact number for that. Sorry. I hope it's very soon, though. I've been talking, and I talk to a lot of my artist friends a lot, probably the most about Bitcoin, trying to encourage them to take Bitcoin for that very reason. So I think, I will say once people start seeing the price kind of heading up, that will probably incentivize them to look more into it. And the more media writes about it too, will have an influence on that. So it all depends on those things, I think.
Andreas Antonopoulos.
I think we're going to see a significant impact in the media, at least in niche sites, within about a year. It's probably going to take 2 to 3 years until you see this having an impact on mainstream sites. I'm looking forward to the day that YouTube makes it easier, or just kind of endorses, facilitates and brings the attention of content providers the ability to pay and get paid by Bitcoin and to collect revenue that way, then I think you're going to start seeing it in other platforms too. But there's also the possibility that these, and I hate, this is a really funny term to use, these legacy providers, and I'm talking about a company that's only been around for less than a decade, these legacy providers of content services may in many cases become leapfrog. They may end up getting bypassed by a newer, more versatile incumbent that uses Bitcoin as a way to differentiate and just completely bypasses YouTube and becomes the next instance. So YouTube becomes the MySpace of video. And the killer feature, the killer app that makes the difference for a new competitor is something like Bitcoin. I think we're in for a lot of surprises in this space, and it's very difficult to make timeline predictions. But whatever your timeline prediction is, I think the thing I've learned over the years watching technology is it always happens faster than you imagine.
It's a great prediction. Blake Anderson, how long will it take before Bitcoin nanopayments catch on? 6 months? A year? More than that?
Well, I have to kind of ride on Andreas' coattails here and say that I have been shocked by the speed of progress in the Bitcoin space. I got involved with Bitcoin when it was in the single digits, and the things that we can already do with it and the things that we have and the speed at which colored coins and various different theories that maybe were only talked about in IRC have actually come to bear. I mean, it's been a light speed ride, so I'd say, you know, whatever the briefest time span you can imagine, cut that in half.
Marshall Hayner.
I always say that everything in the Bitcoin space moves about like 5 to 7 times faster than regular tech. So I was going to guess like 5 years, but I'd say within the next year. I mean, you look at Doge Tipbot, Change Tip, all these services, they're just kind of getting started now, and I think we're going to see over the next couple of years just massive adoption. Oh, before I forgot, Reddit. That is probably where we're going to see it, because if you got everyone's been following the news, Reddit just got $55 million of funding, and they're going to take some of that and put it back into Reddit in the form of some sort of crypto token, and I think that could jumpstart this whole economy.
I have one thing to add on the back of this Reddit thing, and you're very right, I think, but we tend to think that Bitcoin adoption will happen first, and then because people will have Bitcoin, they'll find a place where they can spend it on content with nano payments, etc. It's not going to happen that way. It's going to happen backwards. What will happen is a site will make nano payments so popular that people will go out and buy Bitcoin just so they can use it on this site. So it's the killer app precedes the use of currency. We're not going to have to wait until everybody has Bitcoin and then they'll say, well, what can I spend it on? Let me spend it on this. They're going to find the killer app, and the killer app is going to be the reason they go out and buy Bitcoin.
The answer is 6 months, or until I get Jenna Marbles to accept Bitcoin. Jenna, take my tips. Moving on to questions and answers. We've got a comment from Spotted Marley. He says, the only place they can effectively regulate is where Bitcoin meets fiat. Correct. Chad Crypto writes, the internet connections are going insane in the past few weeks. Good to see your sound is better, Thomas and Megan. And I'm sure he's saying condolences to Blake and Marshall as sound problems continue.
I have a supercomputer. It's an overclocked i7. I have a fiber optic business connection. I have the most expensive webcam ever. It never, ever, ever goes down ever unless I'm on this show, and especially after I talked about the JP Chase breach in system. So if I wanted to be paranoid,
You're breaking up again. Next question. Lawsky is here to FUD out old money that might be considering Bitcoin and run into the hands of JP Morgan's cooked books like the IPO of Alibaba. In my strategic opinion, scaring the rich sheep and pissing us off is his job. Very well said, Armando. We've got another comment from Armando. The BearWhale is a group of traders shaking the price down to bring in their new homeboy in his network. Until the market cap goes up, the big holders are going to consolidate ownership more and more, just like this. That could be very true. What does the panel think? Any final thoughts on the bear whale and possible conspiracy? Andreas?
Well, I don't know. I think it's absolutely futile, and also is a disservice to our audience to try to read the tea leaves of a dynamic market. The interplay between supply and demand on a market as complex, as global, and in many cases with low liquidity, and the kind of bounce back effect that creates in the market. This is a market where the tea leaves are telling us nothing. And to even try to read them, do not give people the false impression that there is any rational basis for movements or decisions made in this market. It's 80% speculative sentiment, 20% blowback from the latest media story, and the rest of it, which adds up to more than 100%, is pure chaos theory in action.
That's true. I was so disappointed. The news kept being good, and the price wouldn't go up. And I said, we keep feeding it good news, and nothing happens. Blake, Anderson, bear whale conspiracy?
I think I went pretty deep into the what if bag by saying that the ASICs that were mining maybe wanted to get rid of theirs, but I don't know that. It's just it's fun to say what if. I don't know. I think that as Andreas was saying before, if you have an investment horizon of 4 or 5 years, these things tend to not be as important. So get your investment horizons in line, and you won't have to worry too much about stuff like this.
Marshall Hayner, are you the bear whale?
You caught me. Yeah, I agree with Andreas that I think we have some of the smartest minds in Bitcoin right here in this panel right now, and not a single one of us, including myself, is comfortable saying, oh, this is definitely what it is. I think it's silly to speculate. And going back to earlier in the show, don't invest anything in Bitcoin that you can't afford to lose. I would say don't invest more than 2% of your net worth if you're, or your investment money into Bitcoin. Spread your stuff out, but Bitcoin is an amazing technology. I think it's here to stay.
Megan Lords, tell us definitely who the bear whale is.
Well, I'm not going to pretend I can say it better than any of the other panelists, so I'm just going to say I agree with everything they said already.
Moving on to predictions or story of the week. This is the part where I ask you to predict the future or provide a story of the week. Andreas Antonopoulos always goes first.
And as always, I am unprepared. I think we're going to be seeing more and more investment rounds and startups in this space. I predicted at the beginning of the year 2014 that this was going to be the year of the platform, where we start seeing applications above and beyond exchanges, above and beyond simple wallets, and we start seeing the next wave of applications where the Bitcoin blockchain technology is used as an application platform. Well, those companies have already produced products. They've already produced ideas and prototypes, and I think we're going to start seeing investment in those companies now. So get ready for a rash of investments into the so-called 2.0 platform and various application companies building on top of blockchain technology.
Do you have any thoughts on Counterparty and the recent announcement that was made in Vegas in collaboration with Overstock?
Well, the only thought I have there is that if you have studied the history of Patrick Byrne and what the incredible criminality that Wall Street exhibited in his company's IPO, as well as the criminality that he discovered in naked shorts and various other tools that are used by Wall Street to rig the market and ensure that the house always wins. What better way to stick it to the man than to build a completely decentralized, network-based, peer-to-peer exchange that obsoletes your entire industry? All the power to him. I hope he succeeds.
Blake Anderson.
Well, my prediction is I'm going to have to play a mockingbird and go back with my other prediction with the J.P. Morgan Chase with their giant hack It's going to happen more, and there's going to be more damage. The fallout from the J.P. Morgan Chase hack, about 70 million accounts that we know of, have been compromised. It sounded to me when I read the report, I'm an information technologist. I've worked in math-based security for Fortune 25 financial institutions. It sounds like to me that their software cert server was completely compromised. And when you have your software certification servers compromised at a place that's big, I mean, it's just a massive disaster. And if we continue to go in the opposite direction with regulation, it's going to happen more often, and it's going to be worse and worse. So my prediction is that look out for more of these centralized institutions to get hacked, and for a lot more fallout to come as a result of it in the future.
And they hacked more than 400 Dairy Queens and Orange Julius. Marshall Hayner.
These are all really great predictions. I would have to say, my prediction, I mentioned it earlier in the show, I've been hearing it for a while, that there is enforcement action potentially coming down on some of these bigger guys, Coinbase and Circle. They make sure to mention that they are financially insured, and that's kind of a selling point for their consumers. I think that might be causing some problems with FDIC and other federal agencies that are, have been looking at this space for a while and are saying that they're going to come down on it. But if you see on my Twitter, there's a little IRC or Skype chat that was going on between some other crypto people, and they're talking about it. So that's my prediction. Beginning of November, something big is going to happen in terms of enforcement actions.
Somebody else just said that to me today in a conversation right before this, so I've heard that as well.
A November surprise. Megan Lords.
I know you think I'm a pessimist sometimes, Thomas, but I have a really good feel-good story of the week. So I just finished up with Coins in the Kingdom this past weekend, and it went really well. There was a lot of stress right before it. The price being down, it kind of bummed a lot of people out. But the conference went really well. It was one of my favorite I've been to. It's a very intimate experience, and I just had a really awesome time. And a lot of people probably heard about the blockchain wedding that took place there, but for me, that was not the coolest thing that happened. So Jason King gave a talk where he revealed that he's been working on a new app that would basically decentralize homeless outreach. So the app is really interesting. You open it up and it's got two buttons, give a meal or get a meal. So I don't know how many people on this panel or in the audience have been, maybe sitting in your house. Maybe you have too much, food that you're not going to eat. Maybe you just finished up at a restaurant, you have some extra food, or you want to give food away to someone, and maybe you can't meet up with the Food Not Bombs people who are doing their weekly or couple times a week food sharing programs. So basically what this would do is allow anyone to sign into the app and give food to people in need. And also, not a lot of people realize this, but smartphones are pretty easily accessible to people who are unbanked or even homeless people, and this will allow them to look for people who are offering food, who they could say, hey, I need a meal, I can't make it to Food Not Bob's or Sean's Outpost or whoever in your area is making food on a regular basis. So this allows individuals to meet up with individuals and get their needs met. And I think this is amazing. I think this is really going to revolutionize the way that we work on this problem, because up until now it's been fairly centralized approaches. Even with Sean's Outpost, even with what they do as far as delivering meals to the homeless people, they've had to do a lot of work in finding everyone, because if homeless is criminalized, you're going to have people hiding who don't want their camps being found by the authorities. So you have a lot of people who could really benefit from this technology. So he told me that, and I mean, it's just the most. I think it's a great idea, and it's still being developed, so I think we'll be seeing it come out in the next couple of months, so keep an eye for that. And I think it's a great tool for activism, and if homeless outreach is something that you really care about, this is going to be really big for people, and I really hope that it catches on in a big way, because this is great for even people who aren't into activism. This is a very easy, simple approach to helping people who are really in need, who've maybe slipped through the cracks and things like that. So that's my feel-good story of the week.
Sounds like a very exciting app. Looking forward to it. Prediction: Bitcoin is not dead. The media is having a field day writing about the price drop, But they don't know what to make of blockchain and Bitfury raising tens of millions of dollars at the same time. A recent article speculates that perhaps Bitcoiners who have been studying cryptocurrency and truly understand it know more about the future as a result of their study. The speculation is correct. Bitcoin is the future, regardless of the price. We are not done. We are not stopping. This is not over. Not by a long shot. Oh, we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.